The route to Stockholm is a familiar one for Captain Arkerstedt and his crew. The flight covers a distance of 900 miles, skirting the coast of northern Europe. As the DC9 tracks along the course, First Officer Renninger checks off each navigational radio beacon as it's reached. It's an opportunity to relax a little in the hectic routine of takeoffs and landings. Every working day, Captain Arkerstedt and his crew make 6 separate flights. So do they find short-haul flying inherently more stressful than long-distance flights?
It's a different kind of stress level flying long distance. Of course, if you are flying 5-6 legs one day with bad weather and lots of other problems, you will have a higher stress level, and you will also have that in a long distance flight. So I wouldn't say that flying short distance is more stressing than flying long distance.
Our DC9 was made in 1980. The classic traditional instrument layout gives away its age, but even though it's mature, it's by no means past its prime. Like Captain Arkerstedt himself, it's good for quite a few years yet.
The aircraft itself is by no means too old. This aircraft we are sitting in now is about 15 years old, and it could have about 15 years more of useful life. But the engines are a bit too noisy for present-day regulations, so we have to modify the engines if we are going to use them after year 2000. Now, we have been using DC9 for many years in SAS, and we have found it to be a very reliable aircraft. It's so reliable, so it's almost boring. The main problems we have with the DC9 is light bulbs in the passenger area. It's very reliable.
That reliability has created something of a phenomenon in the marketplace for second-hand airliners. Whilst many second-hand jets are comparatively easy to buy, it's very hard to get hold of a second-hand or even third or fourth-hand DC9. In the Mojave Desert, there are scores of unwanted jet airliners waiting for new owners, waiting to be cannibalized, or waiting to be scrapped. But any DC9s which arrive there are usually gone within days. Whilst the other airliners await their fate, the DC9s are snapped up by new startup airlines all over the world. From the beginning, the Pratt & Whitney JT8D engine has always been the DC9's power plant. It was developed as long ago as 1960, in an era when engineers still used slide rules. The JT8D simply stands for Jet Turbine 8-Ducted. Most high-bypass engines have only a fifth of their airflow going through the turbine. The JT8D has an unfashionably low ratio of around 1:1, but it still delivers a performance which will ensure it'll be flying well into the next century. The Douglas philosophy of building durable airplanes with designs that could be stretched was already well established by the time its first jet transport, the DC-8, was launched. The DC-8 was designed in 1955, but 10 years later was being offered in 3 different models, up to 187 feet long. The technique was to lengthen the fuselage by installing so-called plugs or sections. As Douglas became McDonnell Douglas, the same technique was used for the narrower fuselage of the DC-9. Additional sections could be inserted to provide increased seating capacity. In 1977 came the DC-9 Super 80, redesignated the McDonnell Douglas 80. This was more than 40 feet longer than the original DC-9 design. It was to become one of the most successful variants of the DC-9 family, and there was still more stretch to come. By 1990, the McDonnell Douglas team were busy with the most ambitious stretch yet. State-of-the-art technology in the design office was to be mirrored by advanced technology on the flight deck of this newest and largest descendant of the DC-9.
On behalf of McDonnell Douglas Corporation, I'm honored and very pleased to welcome you to the rollout of our first MD-90 aircraft.
As it emerged from the hangars at Long Beach in 1993, it seemed to go on forever. The MD-90 is all of 153 feet long. New power plants from International Aero Engines make the MD-90 one of the quietest jets in the world. It's the ultimate stretch of the original DC-9 fuselage. But just how practical is it to keep stretching a modern airliner?
There's an extremely good illustration of what you can and can't do with stretching aeroplanes. If you're in a very long aeroplane, one of the very, very long aeroplanes, even, for example, the Boeing 747 Jumbo, and if you're sitting right down at the back and you're in turbulence and the aeroplane's bouncing around quite a lot, if you look right up the length of the aeroplane, if you can see that far, you will see that the aeroplane is actually bending slightly. It is actually flexing. I hope you're not a nervous passenger when you watch it. There's no need to be. It's expected that the aeroplane will have some flexibility. But of course, if you make it too long, it'll actually break.
McDonnell Douglas have always had a reputation for building tough aircraft that last. The landing gear and the whole aircraft structure is designed to cope with repeated short flights on punishing schedules, where it's usual for an aircraft to make at least one takeoff and one landing for every single hour it flies. Most of the earliest DC-9s made are still flying safely every day and are as popular as ever with passengers.
The DC-9, and as it later became the MD-80 series, is probably the aeroplane of its generation, which is my favorite to fly in as a passenger, providing that I can get a seat up at the front, because if you can, it's the quietest of all of them, simply because of its engines are right down at the back. Makes it very, very quiet indeed. As an aeroplane for the pilots to handle, it's a very, very pleasant, very, very forgiving aeroplane to handle.
DC-9 is the only aircraft that I have not quitted because I was fed up with it. I like to fly DC-9, and even after now I've been flying DC-9 6 years as co-pilot and 7 years as captain, and I still like it very much.
Captain Argerstad has been steadily reducing height for the last 125 miles of the route. Now, 1 hour, 40 minutes after leaving London, we're almost at our destination.
Stockholm, the most beautiful city in the world.
With 25 miles to run, Captain Argerstad begins extending the flaps. They're needed to provide extra lift from the wings as the aircraft reduces speed. They also help slow the aircraft by increasing drag.
On the landing lights so that we are more visible.
As the runway gets nearer, the landing gear is lowered.
Gear down.
3 red lights indicate that 3 sets of wheels are being lowered. There's more noise as wheels protrude into the airflow beneath the aircraft. The lights turn green once the gear is fully down and safely locked in position. Flying with one hand on the control column and the other on the throttles, Captain Argerstad lines up the aircraft on the approach to runway 26 at Stockholm's Arlanda Airport. His co-pilot is handling the radio communications as the aircraft gently loses height. At 1,000 feet, the full 50 degrees of flaps are selected. As the runway threshold is passed, touchdown comes at a speed of 120 knots. Captain Argerstad moves the white throttle levers all the way back and then reaches for 2 levers in front with black handles, the thrust reversers. These move pairs of steel scoops over the outlets of both engines, deflecting the jet exhaust forwards to slow the aircraft. After a few seconds, the speed is sufficiently reduced to retract the reversers back to their normal position.
Off the landing checklist.
Detect loading 19 and near 695. Ground scanning 1532.
The flight has been completed on schedule.
Yes. 1185. 85, scanning 499. Taxi holding 19, scanning 704.
So, 10 minutes past, on time.
The DC9 taxis into position at gate 4 for the passengers to disembark.
Okay. 695, give way to an incoming transfer shortly. He's turning into the target 50.
As the engines wind down at the end of the flight, there's just one last duty for Captain Arkerstedt. He has to radio the SAS engineers to report any technical snags on the DC9 which may have arisen.
Good afternoon. Hello. No big problems. In fact, no problems at all, as usual with DC9.
The front line next follows the Guards through of the Americas expedition through Bolivia and Argentina.